Hello. My voice is a little bit fragile because I'm recovering from an illness. But last night I went to the Deftones concert here in Auckland at Spark Arena. So it was May 13, and it was a great show. I bought the ticket. Oh, it's quite a long time ago now. It would have been November last year. So it was almost 6 months ago, and it wasn't cheap. I was in the standing, the general standing area down the bottom, the main concert floor, I guess. It was about $200. But I've seen the Deftones before, several times, and I'd say this was their best show, mainly because the other two times were at a festival setting, outdoor, in the daytime, and so to have their own concert in an arena, full production, all that stuff, full set list. They played for about an hour and a half. It was a great show. What can I really say about it? I've been a Deftones fan since about 1998, 99, 98, late 90s. I got my first album was Around the Fur, around the Fur tour, I remember. And I played the shit out of that album. I loved that album. I still love that's still probably my favorite album of theirs. Other than maybe excuse me, one or two songs. It's kind of like a perfect album. And then White Pony came out in 2000. I remember I got the special edition of that, the one that was a red jewel case. Like it was not transparent at all. It was like kind of, I don't know, how would you call it? Just like imagine it's completely red. It's not red tinted plastic. It's red plastic. So you can't see through the cover. And the stuff was printed onto the plastic itself, the album title. It had like a little White Pony logo, and the limited edition, special edition had Boys Republic as the bonus song, I remember. And anyway, I'm kind of going to recount my history with the band, I guess. That way through the 2000s, I bought the self-titled album of theirs, came out in 2000, was it 2003, I think? And I liked it, but I didn't like it as much as Around the Fur and White Pony. And then Saturday Night Wrist, I kind of completely, that one passed me by completely. I bought it later, and at the time I listened to some of the songs, but I was I was out of my Deftones kind of thing by then. I'd kind of gone off them a little bit, as I did many bands, in that kind of mid to late 2000s, like around 2005, 6, 7, my music taste changed a lot. And so a lot of the bands that I'd liked in the late 90s, early 2000s, I'd kind of left behind to a degree. Not I completely hate them or anything, but it's just I wasn't listening to them as much. And then they released Diamond Eyes in 2010, and that kind of won me back, because that's another brilliant album. So they played a pretty decent set list, as in they covered a fair amount of their career. I could have probably done with a little bit more of the earlier stuff, because that's kind of more my wheelhouse. But they opened with Be Quiet and Drive as the opening song, which was brilliant. Great opener. Great way to open a show, the way that kind of, how it builds up the intro and then it kind of explodes. Then they did Swerve City, which is from Koi no Yokan, and that's a great kind of, I don't know what you'd call it, kind of high energy song, kind of getting the crowd into it, kind of understand what they played there early in the set. And they played Diamond Eyes from Diamond Eyes. And again, a brilliant song. Then they played, was it Felicitera? I'm never sure how to pronounce that. The one on the original White Pony release. So if you don't know White Pony, here is my copy of White Pony. I'm going to be showing these soon, but what you're going to notice is that most of these Deftones albums, I threw away the jewel cases. This is from that era, which at least I still have the disc, but I don't have the artwork or the jewel case, so it's kind of naked. I'm not sure what. I'm almost certain that this isn't the special edition that I was talking about, the red cover one. I think this was the reissue. So what happened with White Pony is they released it as the original upon release track listing, which was the first song on that was Felicitera. Felicitera. Maybe if I'm saying Felicitera, there's no L in it. It's Felicitera. Felicitera. It's a Brazilian name. And then they re-released it with Back to School as song one. Back to School was the story is that they released White Pony, and the record label wasn't as happy as they could be because it didn't have a obvious hit single, even though now it's considered a classic. And there's songs on it like Change, for example, which are probably, I would guess, one of the top, I haven't looked, but on Spotify, I would guess that would be in the top 5 highest played songs, Change and House of Flies. But the band were kind of pissed off at the label's response, and so they went back into the studio and recorded Back to School, Mini Maggot, which is like almost kind of like a new metal by numbers type song, in my opinion. Like it's got a real kind of catchy riff, like a heavy, repetitive riff, and a kind of sing-along chorus, and they did that almost as like a FU. Well, that's what they say. And they re-released the album with that as the first song. But the original release, the one that I got, had Felicitera as the first song, which got awesome drumming in it, by the way. Anyway, they played that, which I was a little bit surprised that they played that because I'd just been listening to that during the day. Then they played Digital Bath, which I love that song so much. That song is like also from White Pony. It's kind of like I don't know. I can't explain how I love that song and what that song means to me, but it's a brilliant song. So those first 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 songs, kind of like 5 perfect songs in a row. Then they went into kind of the period after that was kind of like, I'd guess the songs I were, there was a lot of songs they played that I liked, but there were some songs in there. They went for a lot for those kind of ballady songs like Sex Tape and Rosemary and Entombed. Entombed's a great song. And these are all good songs. I'm not saying they're bad songs, but they're kind of like... And what I'd say is that Deftones kind of found the formula, is that they always say you can tell the longevity and the popularity of a band by how many women are in the audience. And last night, the audience, I can't give an accurate split, but I wouldn't be surprised if it was 50-50 men and women. Maybe it was more like 60-40 men to women, but there were a lot of women there. If, for example, like the end of this month, Fear Factory are playing, what remains of Fear Factory is basically Dino with some ring-ins, but they're playing a much smaller venue. But if I go to Fear Factory, which I'm kind of of two minds whether I'll go, it will be 95% men, 5% woman, or maybe even 99% or 1% woman. Or another band, Lamb of God and Trivium are doing a tour of Australia, and Matt Heafy from Trivium made a post online saying when they announced these tour dates, which was just this week, he said he'd been, what's the word? Kind of like, he wants to go to New Zealand. He wants the tour to go to New Zealand as well. He's been kind of pushing for that. But they can't get a promoter to pick it up or something. He said, okay, if you're in New Zealand, come on, I don't know, get in contact with some promoters, kind of, make some noise about this, and maybe they'll add a date to New Zealand, which would be awesome. I'd love to see Lamb of God. I've never seen Lamb of God live. I'd love to see Trivium. I've kind of not the biggest fan of, but I'd like to see them live. And but my point was, if Lamb of God and Trivium come here again, that will be 100% dudes. Whereas Deftones have kind of had this resurgence in their career, and this kind of like I wouldn't say a second life or anything like that, but it kind of does seem like that it is split into kind of two things that I'd say, from kind of adrenaline through to maybe the self-titled album were more metal at their core. No, of course, there's always been songs that are like Mascara and Teenager and things like that. But sorry, my throat's really kind of coming apart right now. But since, I'd say, especially since Diamond Eyes on, they've kind of leaned more into, I don't even know how, I wouldn't even call it ballady. They're kind of more a song like Entombed or Sex Tape, which seem to really appeal to the younger crowd, and especially also to women, which is a great thing. I'm not saying it's bad, but I'm more of the former camp. I like I said, my favorite album of theirs is Around the Fur. And so I would have preferred them to play kind of more cuts from that era. They did play the song Around the Fur from the album, which is awesome to hear. What else did they play? Well, they played 7 Words from Adrenaline. That was the only Adrenaline song, but I'm not surprised. When I saw them in Korea 12 years ago, they played Engine Number 9 as well, and maybe Bored. They played My Own Summer in the encore, which is kind of, I guess that would probably be their biggest song, I'd guess. They played Rocket Skates and trying to think what else they played of that kind of stuff. Anyway, my point is they played a good, across their career. They played Genesis from OMS, which I love that song. That stands anywhere against anything in their catalog, in my opinion, that song. They played Cherry Waves. But they played Beauty School, that's right. And Beauty School is kind of one of those ballady, softer, I guess more kind of melodic songs. But I love that song. That's like a perfect song. Especially love the kind of the breakdown, the bridge, where it kind of goes quiet every time. That part. So the overall, the set list was great. I don't really have any big complaints about their set list. Of course, there's always going to be songs you wish they'd played and songs you think, well, they didn't need to play that. But overall, great set list with some songs that I didn't expect. The sound, I'm never one to really comment on that, because concert sound kind of sounds all the same to me. Like you always hear, the sound was terrible, it was muddy, it was this, it was that. And a concert is just fucking loud, and so I'm not really a good judge. I wore earplugs for the second time in my life. I did that at the Opeth's show last year, and I was so happy with not having ringing, muffled ears for 48 hours after. I thought, fuck, I'm going to do that from now on. And so I did that last night, and again, protected my ears. I left without the ringing. And in my opinion, didn't affect the enjoyment. I stood about a quarter way. If the whole floor of the arena, I was probably about a quarter of the way to the stage, or quarter to a half of the way to the stage. So I was at a good distance to enjoy it, to see everything. Nothing was really blocking my view. I'm pretty tall, so that helps. I'm sure I was probably blocking some people behind me. Sorry. The production, like the lights and especially the video screens, were amazing. That was kind of almost one of my favorite parts of it. I was actually really interested where they got the footage from. Now, I'm saying that I'll probably find out it was AI or something, and I'll be like, God damn it, fucking AI. But it was like some of the, like, for example, during Change, it started off with, like, imagine like a sunrise on the Serengeti in Africa, you know, kind of like this huge sun on the horizon, blazing red and orange. It started at the bottom of the screen and kind of slowly went up until it kind of completely encapsulated the whole screen as the song progressed. And really simple, but really kind of effective. And during Diamond Eyes, there was like this man and woman looked like they were underwater with the way they were moving, but kind of like dancing slowly together underwater. Hard to describe, but again, really, really fits the song so well. There was another one. What was the one? It was a fucking weird part. What was it? Maybe it was during Rocket Skates? No, it wasn't Rocket Skates. It was another one. It was this guy with a knife. It looked like it was taken from some weird 1970s occult movie. Now I know which song it was, because in my mind I was thinking, I thought it didn't connect to the song, but it still matched up. Was it Entombed? No, it wasn't Entombed. I can't remember, but it was fucking weird. And there was, maybe it was Rocket Skates. Anyway, I'm interested. I'm maybe going to try and find out where they got some of these videos from. Like the eyes, like a lot of women's faces, close up on a like woman's face and their eyes, like blackened eyes, and Be Quiet and Drive with birds taking off, like birds flying. You know, I was talking to my wife about this. I was saying, this is a kind of a separate thing. I was talking about the energy of the concert. And that it was overall, it was a good energy. The crowd were into it, and people were moving and making noise. But I was saying, when my first concert I ever went to was Smashing Pumpkins during the Melancholy and the Infinite Sadness tour. And the Smashing Pumpkins are hardly some fucking hardcore, you know, super intense kind of slam dancing, moshing type music or crowd. But my experience of that show, it was like a fight for your life. It was so crushed, and maybe it was because of crowd safety was different back there, but you were so smashed in, and the crowd moved like a wave, and people were just fucking going nuts, like moshing and moving around. I remember that show probably would have been about the same length, about an hour and a half to 2 hours. It felt like it was 12 hours long, and it felt like at periods I was fighting for my life. Whereas shows now, of course, there are so many reasons for that. Part of it is that I'm not right up the front, but I wasn't right at the front of the Smashing Pumpkins either. But anyway, but there is noticeably less energy expended from the crowd during rock shows nowadays. It's just a fact. You can look at videos from the 90s and now, like crowd surfing and all that kind of stage diving. And I was saying to my wife, I was like, I'm so happy that I grew up in a time of that. And I was thinking, well, why is it? And like I was saying, there's lots of reasons, but another reason might be there was a lot less production. There was no video scripts. Even when I saw Metallica in 1998, there was very little way in the way of production. There was no video screens or anything like that, or visuals. It was just a band on stage playing. So it was a lot more kind of focused, and a lot less to draw your attention away, I guess. Then there's also the thing of people using their phones to film, and that's part of it, I guess, as well. But Chino sounded great. He seemed like he was happy. He said several times how kind of blown away. It was a sold out show, so he was blown away by. I can't remember the last time they'd been here. Excuse me. It was definitely way pre-COVID. But they haven't been here for, at least like 6-7 years. And so to come back and see it to a sold out show, he said he was blown away and so appreciative of it. And that he did seem genuine in that. They just played Australia, and they'd played two nights in Sydney, Melbourne, and Brisbane. And I'm pretty sure they sold out some of those shows as well. So they really are in kind of like I said, a career resurgence, or I don't know what you want to call it, but there aren't many bands from that era where they came up. I know they get lumped into that new metal thing in their early days. And they toured with a lot of those bands like Korn and whatnot, although less so as time progressed. But if you look at those bands, and they were always different, obviously, they had their own kind of sound and a lot broader range of influences, and you can hear that in their songwriting now. A lot of they talk about the shoegaze kind of crossover. I think that's kind of a bit overemphasized, how much shoegaze type guitar and vocals, but it's there. And then you can hear, especially in Chino's vocals, the influence of Morrissey and Robert Smith, and kind of more of that kind of stuff. But what was my point? They've it's amazing how they appeal to such a younger crowd. Because if Korn came and played here, and I'd like to see Korn. I haven't seen them for about 20 something years. I doubt they would sell out that same arena. They might, but I doubt it. And they would certainly get a much older crowd, kind of more my age, or a little, 30s, 40s, or maybe even older, and less girls. Because their sound didn't evolve as much as the Deftones. And Korn tried other stuff. They did that fucking dubstep album, and they've kind of tried to lean into a more, I guess, pop sound. They did some writing with kind of pop writers, like those Swedish guys who did, some of those like 90s pop star songs. But they've always kind of, I guess, more stuck to their original sound. And so therefore that turns off a lot of people and maybe sounds a lot more dated, whereas Deftones have managed to keep their sound kind of timeless. I won't say of the time, because I don't think that their albums are particularly, like their most recent album, Private Music, which I'm kind of a bit iffy on that album, to be honest. I don't think it's the greatest album, but it sounds like a lot of people do love it. I don't think it sounds particularly like of its time. It sounds like a Deftones album. So it's I'm not exactly sure what the formula or what the reason is why they've managed to keep so much success and kind of almost build the success. Because again, if they had toured here 20 years ago, 2006, or even 15 years ago, I doubt they would have sold out Spark Arena. Spark Arena, I think, is like a 10,000 capacity. It's not massive, but it's, you're doing pretty well if you sell it out. For example, Perfect Circle are playing there in November, and thus far they have not sold it out. And you say, well, Perfect Circle are kind of a similar fan base and a similar, their sound is not purely metal. Tool sold out 2 nights. They certainly sold out 1 night. Maybe the second night wasn't sold out. Iron Maiden is playing there with Megadeth, like early next year or maybe late this year. They sold out the first night. But, Iron Maiden are Iron Maiden, and, that's that's not much of a surprise to me. So I had a bad, it wasn't even a cold, I don't know what the fuck it was. I guess it was, that's a viral infection, a super sore throat late last week. And I got over that, but then I just felt absolutely wiped out. Even yesterday in the daytime, even though I'm like over the cold, I've recovered, my body is just kind of like super tired. And so I was almost like, fuck, can I go tonight? Can I go to this concert? I'm going to stand for a couple of hours. I did go, obviously, and I was actually did fine. And I felt almost rejuvenated me. I felt a lot better after the show than I did before it. So, and this morning I felt a lot better as well, even though I had a shit sleep last night. Okay, so I'll quickly show what I have in the way of CDs. So the only actual full jewel case artwork and disc I have is Saturday Night Wrist. I got this secondhand late last year. I think I showed it when I first turned up. Now, when this album came out, 2006, I think, it wasn't actually that well received. I think it's kind of was one of the lesser performing one of their albums. It was kind of the last album they made before Chi died, and it was kind of quite a tumultuous time in the band, from what I've read. But this is a pretty good album in hindsight. I don't like Hole in the Earth. They played that last night. That's probably one of my least favorite Deftones songs, full stop. Cherry Waves they played. Mine. I love that song. I wish they had played that. At the show, I was actually thinking that in my mind. I hope they play Mine, but they didn't. That's got Serge doing guest vocals. Maybe that's why they don't play it live, but they could still do it without him. Xerxes, that's a great song. I like Pink Cell Phone. I like Combat. So it's got some good songs. It's kind of got a different feeling about it. It's kind of got a more, this kind of, I feel was kind of like almost the first turn after the self-titled album, which was quite heavy and quite bludgeoning. This felt like a different direction to what they would eventually go on to in Diamond Eyes. I don't know if I'm off on thinking that. This was produced by Bob Ezrin as well, which is kind of not a name you'd expect to see with Deftones. But this is a good condition. Like I said, it was secondhand. I bought off one of the Facebook trading groups. This was the original lineup. Chi, Abe, Chino, Frank, and Steph. I guess Frank wasn't in the originals lineup, but I guess what most people consider to be kind of the classic lineup before Chi passed away after a serious car accident. And he was kind of in a coma for about 4 or 5 years. And then, of course, Steph wasn't there last night. Stephen Carpenter is the Deftones guitarist. He doesn't tour them outside of the continental, well, I guess outside of North America. He plays US shows. And I saw a video of him playing a show in Vancouver. So I guess, he doesn't want to fly, I think, is part of it. And he doesn't also want to leave. Obviously, he does leave the US because he was in Vancouver, but maybe that's just across the border. And I think I saw also a video of him playing in Mexico. But he doesn't, I don't know, there's various, you can read about why he doesn't want to leave North America. So that's kind of like a bit of a bummer. But the guy who they actually had 2 extra guitarists. They have Lance Jackman. Now, I don't actually know which was which. I'm pretty sure my stage left was Lance Jackman. He's got long hair. And he also fills a lot of the vocals. Actually, early in the set, I was thinking, fuck, this guy is filling a lot of the vocal holes here. And then there's also Sean Lopez playing guitar, stage right. So they've got 2 touring guitarists. And then Chino plays guitar for some songs, like Digital Bath, for example, he plays guitar. And then they have Fred Sablin, I'm not sure how to pronounce, who's their bassist now. So Sergio Vega was their bassist after Chi died, from Diamond Eyes through through OMS. And then he left during the COVID period. Got fired. I don't know how you want to choose to view that. Which was a bummer because I like Sergio. He was in Quicksand, that kind of New York, what would you call them? Post-hardcore? I don't know how you really, they remind me of Helmet, that kind of sound. But it seems that parting of ways wasn't, what's the word? Amicable? Which is always, anyway. But now Fred Sablin is this. So when you're actually only seeing Chino and Abe from the original lineup, and Abe is still amazing on drums. And then Frank Delgado, the keyboard sample, he doesn't really do. Originally, it was he was more DJ, kind of like with turntables, but it sounds like a lot more now he's doing keyboards. And again, as their sound has progressed, the keyboards and samples fill in a lot more of the, they fatten the sound a lot and are present on a lot more of those more recent albums. So I also have Diamond Eyes without the jewel case. So at least this one I did keep the artwork, the booklet. So I bought this new when it came out back in 2010. Excellent album. You can see why so many people kind of see this as a return to form, or however you want to kind of term it. See, there is just keys and samples, Frank Delgado. Great artwork as well. I showed White Pony. No artwork, no jewel case. Naked. Put that down carefully. This one is the self-titled from 2003. That's got Hexagram and Minerva and Bloody Cape, which may be one of my favorite songs ever from the Deftones, Bloody Cape. I was hoping they would play that. The songs that I really hoped they would play that they didn't were Bloody Cape, Die the Flu, maybe Engine Number 9, and Mine from Saturday Night Wrist, but they didn't. But you can't have everything, can you? I bought this new as well when it came out. So I've owned almost every Deftones album. No, I haven't. Actually, there's a lot I haven't owned. But I've owned Around the Fur, White Pony, self-titled, Saturday Night Wrist, Diamond Eyes, Koi no Yokan. So actually, I haven't owned Gore, OMS, Private Music, and Adrenaline. So there's actually a lot I haven't owned, but a lot I do own as well. So yes, Koi no Yokan came out in 2012, and I kept the artwork cover for this, but not the full jewel case. I bought this new when it came out as well. And that's another great song they could have played, Romantic Dreams. That would have fit into I would have preferred that over Rosemary, for example, or Sex Tape. But I know a lot of the TikTok kind of generation love that song, Sex Tape. So maybe that's why, I don't know. Anyway. A great album, though. So we got Swerve City, they played that. Romantic Dreams, like I said, is a great song. Entombed, they played that. And I said Rosemary, they played that. And they played Tempest as well. Played what? Quite a few songs from this. 1, 2, 3, 4 songs. Like I said, they played a good range across the albums. Maybe, so 3 from Around the Fur, 1 from Adrenaline, 3 from White Pony. How many from self-titled? Maybe only. Sorry, I'm trying to look at the set list here. What are those? This is going to be boring if I start doing this. Did they play anything from the self-titled? Now I'm mixing myself up here. Fierce Digital, maybe nothing. Okay, I'll go through. Okay, so Koi no Yokan, Be Quiet and Drive is Around the Fur. Swerve City is Koi no Yokan. Diamond Eyes is Diamond Eyes. Fiesta Sierra is White Pony. Digital Bath is White Pony. Tempest is Koi no Yokan. Milk is Private Music. Mountain is Private Music. Beauty School is Diamond Eyes. Sex Tape is Diamond Eyes. Rocket Skates is Diamond Eyes. Rosemary is Koi no Yokan. Around the Fur is Around the Fur. Entombed is Koi no Yokan. Hole in the Earth is Saturday Night Wrist. Change is White Pony. Genesis is Ohms. Infinite is Private Music. Cherry Waves is Saturday Night Wrists. My Own Summer is Around the Fur. And 7 Words is Adrenaline. So they played nothing from self-titled. I just realized. That's good. They could have played, like I said, they could have played Hexagram, Minerva. I thought Minerva especially, I thought they would have played, because that was quite a big song. Teenager they could have played. That would have gone over well with a younger crowd. And especially they could have played Bloody Kate, but obviously they didn't. But anyway. So yeah, I've talked here for a long time. It was a great show. Glad I went. Would I see them again? You know, when I bought this, because I've talked about going to shows and how I kind of, as I get older, I prefer seated, tickets. The idea when I bought this was almost like, this sounds stupid, I know, but it was almost meant to be like a last hurrah. So I'm 45, and I would like for one last time to kind of get right up the front for a show and really kind of get into it and amongst it. And I thought, well, I'm going to do that for this show. And this maybe is my last chance to do that, because the older I get, the less inclined I am to do so. This is a good band to do it for, high energy. But I was so fucking wiped out from being sick last week that was off the table. And also, I don't know, as I got close to the show, I was like, I don't want to do that. That's a young man's game. And again, I go back, I've talked about the same kind of theme so many times, how it's so important for kids to go to shows, because enjoying shows, concert, live music in that way, in that kind of visceral, full body way, is really something you can only do up to a certain age. And it's not even like physical limitations or anything like that, although that is part of it. Or kind of being the weird older guy up the front. It's that you just don't have the want to do that. You don't have what's the word I'm trying to find here, but you don't have the desire to do that. It's not as enjoyable. But when you're young, you're just kind of so lost in it, and it's just so that part of your brain isn't switched on, or another part of your brain is switched on, and so you can. And I just so many memories I have of being a teenager, late teens, bands like Faith No More and Korn and 9 Inch Nails, and being right up in amongst it and going fucking mental. Limp Bizkit, Smashing Pumpkins, I said, or did I say? Foo Fighters. These are kind of some of the shows I remember from kind of being 15, 16, 17. Soundgarden, Offspring. And it's like you can't go back. You can't get that period of your life back. I remember reading this review once. This guy was talking about, I think it was about the concept of tiger mums. There was that book, I think, about 10, 15 years ago. But more broadly, the idea of you control your children and you limit them, and they have to study very hard and they must do this activity and they can't go and do this thing and this thing so that they can achieve success and have the life they want when they're older. And that is important. Absolutely. I have a kid and I can see that that's important, but at the expense of other kinds of experiences, it's just sad. And the guy who was writing the review said, and I can't remember the exact word and I'll butcher it, but it kind of really struck a chord with me. He said, you can only experience being 12 and staying up all night and playing Mortal Kombat on Super Nintendo when you're 12. If you try and do that when you're 32, it's not the same and you won't want to do it. And that sense of enjoyment that you can only really grasp as a child is fleeting. And so cutting that off for kids is very detrimental and tragic. And I think about the experiences I got to have, and I think about the experience that kids have nowadays. When I say kids, I mean late teens as well. I can imagine when I was 15, if I was a 15-year-old now, Deftones would have been if I had the same mind I have, Deftones would have been a band I would have loved to have seen when I was 15. So would 15-year-olds be allowed to go to those concerts nowadays? Like, they didn't look like they were, when I say they were young people, I'm saying more like in their early 20s, maybe kind of 18, 19. I don't think I saw any kind of 15-year-olds there. But when I was that age, 15, 16, so much of the crowd were that age. And you think, do 15 and 16-year-olds go to shows nowadays? What music are they going to see? Of course they have their own music. I sound like I'm like an old man shaking my fist at the cloud. I know they have, but I stay up to date with tours and gigs and things like that, even of music I don't like. And there isn't a whole lot of music. Like the big festival they have down here in the summer is Laneway. And they also have Rhythm and Vines, which is like a New Year festival. It's like a camping, like proper big festival. And I'm sure that those would be good. But I've seen videos of especially Laneway. It just doesn't seem the same. It doesn't have the same wild abandon. And the age is a bit older. Like I said, it's not so much the 14, 15, 16. It's more early 20s, those kinds of things. And so do kids of that age, because I think that age period, those formative years, 13 to 18, so important to life experience. And it seems that kids that age now don't get to experience as much. And it's just every time I go to a show, it just kind of reinforces in my mind. And then all these studies constantly come out. Kids nowadays are more depressed and have more anxiety and are lonely and don't have friends and bloody. And it's like, fuck, well, maybe we just got to let them do shit. But the other thing I was thinking about the other day is that by us restricting kids of things that we think are unsafe, but actually aren't unsafe, but we think are unsafe, we are making them unsafe. Making those situations unsafe. So if I think about like going to a concert, okay, say if a show of 10,000 people, if half of those people are kids, then it makes it safer for kids. Whereas if it's just 10%, then those kids are more vulnerable to the other 90% of non-kids. I'm not really expressing that in the way that I want, but I don't know. I'm really rambling here, and it's been 45 minutes. Fuck. Okay, well, we'll leave it there. Deftones, great band, even after all these years. Even Adrenaline came out in 95, I think. So it's like over 30 years, and they're still doing it. Thank you for watching.